So good afternoon, everyone. Today we are hosting 10th live stream together with a powerful woman, an agile leader with a career devoted to helping civil society organizations to drive democratization and mainstreaming of human rights. She is currently managing EU's largest civil society support program in a single country, which is Turkey. The program called European Union Civil Düşün program, and it translates as Think Civil in English. So how are you, Dilek?
I'm great, Melis. How are you? I'm glad to be with you and everyone else this evening.
Same here for me, for our colleagues as well. So today's discussion point is civil society digital transformation. So if our participants would like to ask something, please, you can write your question in the chat board, or alternatively, you can raise your hand if you would like to ask for the floor. So, Sivil Düşün was launched actually just as the pandemic hit Turkey, and you and your team immediately launched a COVID-19 call for proposal to support civil society organizations and activist support groups whose rights actually face special challenges under the pandemic. So, as into the 6th month of the program, what were your first observation on the Turkish civil society organizations' adaptation to this new changing dynamics?
Well, I would say first, it's a very strong reaction and desire. The demand has been huge. Clearly an indication that a lot of people's rights were threatened under the COVID-19 situation and continue to be because we're still living with it. So I think we had, an incredible reaction, much higher than we anticipated. And I think that's an indication of how resilient and responsive civil society wants to be to what's, going on in the environment. But from a digital transformation point of view, which is sort of the topic of our discussion, first I want to say that I'm not a digital transformation expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a consumer, and I am speaking today as a civic leader who's interested, as many of you are, in trying to harness the power of digital for our various causes. When you look at what the meaning, what does digital transformation mean? It means incorporating digital into every aspect of the way that we work. So it's not just about, using your website for, putting out information. It's incorporating all these technologies into every facet of your work, whether it's human resources or data collection or reporting or finances or whatever it is. It's integrated into every aspect of your work, and it also sort of calls for a change in the way that you interact with your audience, because digital is this, it's a powerful communication tool, and it works when you engage and when you start building a community. So on the two sides, it's integrated into everything that you're doing, but you're also using it to build a community. When we look at Turkey, first of all, I think the opportunities for digital should be very high here, because we have one of the highest rates of use of social media tools in the world. We have a young population. But we're seeing that the use of these tools by civil society really does lag behind the rest of society. So society is out there using it, and civil society is lagging behind. We're also seeing that a rise in individual activism versus activism through organized civil society, which means that you don't have civil society organizations using digital as much as individual activists are using it, or individual movements that are using it. But I think when we look at the situation with COVID, I think that it is forcing us to change. So those organizations who had been resistant, who always prefer to do things in person, now are suddenly awakened to how fantastic it is, actually. Yes, it has, it's not as much fun, to be with you in person than it is in this kind of environment, but still, we're able to have a good communication. We're able to get a lot of work done. We're able to make decisions. We're able to debate and discuss. And I think what's happening is that the COVID situation is, forcing us to adapt new habits and opening the window for use in ways that maybe would not have existed before. I would say the other thing that's happening is there's a pretty significant gap between the older generation of civil society organizations and actors and the younger generation. Younger generation is much more facile and has adopted much more quickly. So there's kind of a gap in that.
Yeah. So actually, I was curious, what was the majority of the requests for support that you have been receiving, if you have that kind of statistics, let's say?
Well, first of all, I think that the total range, I think we reached close to 50 different provinces across Turkey. And the most of the activities were directed at supporting women, children, frontline workers, the handicapped. In terms of the kinds of activities that they're using it for, actually it's for what we would call digital content. Unfortunately, the eligible costs under our program don't cover digital tools. So you're not able to buy we're not able to help them purchase a Zoom subscription or to use other kinds of ICTs. But what we saw is that the vast majority of people were trying to create content that they could then distribute on digital channels, which is really good, because if you can have the tools, but if you don't have engaging content, it's not going to help you reach your goals.
Exactly. Recently, I came across with an OECD report on digital transformation and the future of civic space. So
yeah, that was very interesting. I really appreciated that you shared it with me. I liked it. I learned a lot from it.
Yeah, and you saw, based on that report, they talk about 4 future scenarios, how they link digital transformation will affect civil society. So the first plausible future is civic space collapse. The second one is civic space flourish. The third one is civic space transform itself. And the fourth one is civil space breaks apart. So what is your opinion on those future scenarios and how action should be taken forward?
Well, I like to address it, I think, in 2 ways for you. One, Melis and our friends who are online, when I think about going digital, at least for the work of civil society, I think there are 6 dimensions that we look at. One is, using the tool itself, purchasing the tool or developing the tool and learning how it works. That's more of the design part of the tool. And then there is the content, what information or what messaging you convey using those tools, what kind of tone you take, and what kind of relationship you form with the people who are consuming that information. In other words, are people reacting? Are they, as a result, joining in on what you're doing? Are they participating, or are they just passively reading and absorbing? There, the analytics part of it, which is taking a look at measuring whether or not you're having any kind of impact. It's using it to collect data and analyze data. And it's also being used for creating efficiencies in the way you do your work. On all 6 of these dimensions, I would say that Turkey has a long way, civil society has a long way to go. I think we're not nearly as advanced as we could be in terms of the tools, the analytics, and we're just starting to understand, I think, the importance of the messaging and the importance of content. And when I compare this to, civil society organizations that I have worked with in the United States or in Europe, that's what I'm gauging it to. But I think the potential is here. I don't think it's because, we don't have the capacity. I think that we just haven't gotten ourselves there. And that's why it's relevant to this discussion of what the OECD laid out, because what the OECD says is, on the one hand, you have these tools, while they're very powerful for mobilizing people, they can be used by the bad guys just as effectively as they can be used by the good guys. Yeah. Right. Or they can be used by governments to restrict civic space. And so we've already seen some of that going on here in Turkey and in many other parts of the country. And so the scenario suggests that the restriction, the bad guys use it so effectively, and the restrictions become so severe that civil society sort of voluntarily withdraws. Mm. So that that's a very realistic threat. Under the second scenario, civil society uses these tools to a maximum extent and then works to figure out how to mitigate, to circumvent, with technology companies, to circumvent the restrictions. So, a government may try to prevent you from using WikiLeaks. What can you do to circumvent that action? So it means being proactive and anticipating. Under the third scenario, civil society is transferring itself. And this is very interesting, because what it's saying is that if we digitally transform, all of us, then what will happen is that institutionalized, formal civil society is no longer prominent. And what becomes prominent are these informal sort of communities, networks, platforms, people coming together on various kinds of issues, communities that don't recognize borders, they're global, etc. And what happens is that it becomes so powerful because you get such a following that actually we start creating pressure on the bad guys or the restrictive government actions. And on the fourth scenario, civil society breaks apart. The idea that what they're saying is digital is used as a polarizing tool, and not just polarizing in two ways, multiple ways, so that civil society breaks apart into really small parts. And when that happens, there's no coordination, there's no collaboration, there's no trust, and you begin to see big socioeconomic gaps. So the rich use the digital tools really effectively and leave the poor behind. Istanbul, people who live in Istanbul race ahead, and people who are living in Erzurum, are left behind. So it creates more economic divide, social divide, and sorry, my alarm, and geographic divide, as well as gender divides. And when we look at these, I think we can say that Turkey is experiencing some of what's going on in the first scenario, and I think also what's going on in the fourth scenario.
Yes. And how about those, let's say, inequalities that you recently mentioned about access to those tools, those digital tools for a better advocacy? There can be any measures or any observation who are facing those inequalities actually reaching those digitals? Actually, for the most probably the communities, they are facing this disadvantaged situation. Actually,
yes,
it might also apply to that context as well.
Right. So we as civil society activists have to be conscious of the fact that some people may not be able to access internet or don't have use of these tools. So you have to figure out, okay, how are we going to accommodate that? What are strategies and tactics? I think that a big role can be played by the donor community. We see how donor communities are able to inspire new practices and new thinking, and just, you know, trying out new things simply by the kinds of resources that they make available to civil society. So I think where we have had, you know, I'm not suggesting at all that resources that are going to, you know, work for human rights decrease, but we can say, you know, we want to support groups that do work on human rights, but we want the resources to be for digital transformation impact. And I think that what we need is for a lot of our early adopters. There are a number of pioneers in Turkey, people, civil society leaders who are really, you know, are models of this digital transformation. And we need them to lead. We need them to show us the way, to mentor. And I think that all of us who in our own little spaces, you know, we have to be much more dogged and say, okay, we want to try this. We need to get access to it and to try to use these resources. But I think, you know, certainly one of the big messages that we would like to convey is to the donor community is to start stimulating this digital transformation.
Exactly, I totally agree. And actually, we will come to this specific donor contribution to that area shortly. But first, I would like to ask you, when we talk about this digital transformation and future of civil society, what are the opportunities and challenges in your opinion? You just started to mention a little bit, but if you can have more concrete example or some kind of diversity.
Well, I think the opportunity is present, right? I said, you know, we're talking about, we have a young population. So we have, and already we see that the trends that the OECD report was talking about, you know, a trend towards more individual activism. You know, we're seeing that actually the numbers of people who are active in organized civil society is declining. It's not that they're not active, they're active in different ways. So it shows that there is a market, you know, a group of people who want to use these digital tools, and there's some very good examples of, there's something called ihtiyaç harita, and there's a whole variety of different kinds of tools where people are actually contributing, they're volunteering, they're doing all kinds of things because it's right here, it's available to them, in it, you know, it's coming to where they are on a daily basis. So that opportunity exists. I think the fact that, as I said before, the COVID situation is forcing civil society organizations that were resistant to using these tools, thinking that these tools aren't very good or finding them frightening or intimidating. The experience of participating in Zoom, and you know, you're seeing it all over the place, all kinds of panels and conferences. I think that is an opportunity too, that people are much more open to making this kind of shift. And if that's the case, then what we need is just showing them the way. And so that's where the responsibility falls to programs like Sivil Düşün and Etkiniz and other programs that the European Union supports, as well as leading civil society organizations who can really set the path there. So I think there's much more opportunity than challenge. That is not to say that we may not find more restrictions coming our way, probably, because that's the kind of environment we're in. But until that happens, we ought to go for it, and also engage in conversations with international counterparts who may be a little bit more experienced than we are on how we can, you know, circumvent these challenges and leverage the opportunities.
Yes, exactly. So my last question will be actually something that will be more interesting for our company. What is your opinion on how development cooperation provider can support civil society organization and activists? Actually, it can be on that digital transformation area or others.
Well, I think what we need to do, if I'm speaking, I'm a team leader of a project that WeGlobal is supporting, so I think of myself as part of the WeGlobal community now. But I think that you know, it's our job now in future proposals to integrate this into all of the kinds of plans that we propose and make, because you know, I think those who are requesting proposals are interested. I mean, they're aware of this change that's going on, and so their expectations will also be, what is the answer? How does a development expert, a team like ours or Etkinez or others, going to use these tools to help move whatever the mission or the purpose of the project is forward. So we have a responsibility to be as up to date as we possibly can, be familiar with these tools, and also acquire a lot of experience. I think, you know, for just the example, this kind of Friday discussion that WeGlobal is hosting is just an example of how we can be using these kinds of platforms to share and exchange and build on our experience.
Exactly, to also to support the new generation and more active and more,
that's right,
say, the digital generation.
Right.
So happy to hear your actually your comments on that. Actually, I would like to thank you for all your contribution actually for today, and for all your support through the Civil Düşün program that you have been contributing since 6 months, and it will be continuing for more than years. And hope we will be able to touch several civil society organizations and activities in each way they need support. So I would like to just get your final words, and then we can go on question and answer section.
Okay. Well, let me just say thank you. It's a total pleasure and it's a complete honor to serve in this role. I see it as a big responsibility, and we take it seriously. And I work with a wonderful group of people, some of whom are on the call today. So let's go to questions. I think I've talked enough.
Okay, good. So if someone has a question, you can write on the chat board, or you can raise your hand. We can just wait for a couple of minutes for any questions.
Or if it's not a question, just somebody else who has experience that would like to add would also be fantastic. Because as I say, I'm not a digital transformation expert by any means.
Okay.
Well, why don't we ask a question then?
Okay.
I would love to hear from those of you who are just getting accustomed to using these kinds of meeting tools and so forth over since the COVID situation struck. What has interested you? What has it made you think of? Do you find it easy? Do you find it hard? Do you find it exciting? What can you share with us?
It seems we are a shy company.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, please.
Actually, our company, they are always supporting themselves and all the employees to using. They just keep asking us if you need any new tools, any digital tools to ease your job actually for any means. And then we used to use another, let's say, online meeting tool. Then they introduced us that Teams, and we had several, let's say, comments. It's hard. We are not getting used to that actually. But it was just launched a few months ago when we started remote working. And then since March, it was our lifesaver, that Teams, and we start to use before, let's say, several institutions. So we were like getting used to all his features, etc. So, for example, I was using for another schools, for my kids, etc.
Yeah.
That's why, as a pioneers, let's say, the management is very important. And it's always, there is a reaction to the change. But when we start using that, you can see all the opportunities that ease our job in several means. So it will be also an important tool for civil society organizations, activists, students, private sector, public, for everyone.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, and I would say that you know, going digital is not. It requires human beings and a team and expertise. And so I just know from our experience, you know, as Sivil Düşün, we've gotten a lot of support from the team there at WEglobal headquarters, helping us to adapt. And so having that kind of expertise, I think, is very important.
yes, exactly, in every way. Thank you, Dilek, for your time. It was a nice 30 minutes together with you and our colleagues.
You're very welcome, and it was very nice to be with you again. And hello, everybody. I hope at some point we'll have a chance to meet.
Yes,
I really love to hear your thoughts, but
hopefully there will be more time to discuss one-to-one with them when we are all in the office. Hopefully,
yes.
in the future, we will see. So thank you so much, and thank you for all our participants, and I wish everyone a good weekend. And thank you for our team who was organizing in each aspect, our communication IT department, to initiate that organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Really nice.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.